When my mom suggested that I maybe focus a little bit more on anime on this channel because I have a real passion for it and I have a lot to say about it, I don't know if she meant I should talk about series like Interspecies Reviewers, because that's a show that my mom would be really proud I'm watching right now, right? Hey everyone, this is Kevin T. Rodriguez, film critic of iCritic.net, and just to assure my poor dear sweet mother right now, with the exception of one episode for review purposes because I finally got curious enough to see what this show was about, I am not watching this show. It really isn't for me. I unfortunately understand the appeal for some people, but it's been showing up in a lot of my news feeds from other YouTubers who do a lot of anime, this show. And granted, I did do a video on the show already because I thought it was strange. And the story behind that video and the story was that Funimation licensed the show Interspecies Reviewers. And it's where really drooling boys, let's say, like to go to these places where people go to get pleasured and review the effectiveness of the pleasuring and whether or not other people should go to these places to get pleasured. It's definitely a little spicy, but it knows that, and it knows exactly what it wants to be. So if this isn't a show that sounds particularly appealing to you, you know what? Great. It doesn't want you anyway. Well, Funimation licensed the show, started putting it on their Funimation Now app, where I did not watch it because of what happened next, and after the third episode, they basically decided to remove it. And I made a video because that was like strange, and their reasons were it fell outside their standard. And I thought that was really going to be the end of it, but I must have been onto something when I made that video, and the more videos I watched, the more I realized what a big deal this actually is. Not because Interspecies Reviewers is a particularly great show. I mean, here's the thing. Again, if you like this style of show, then more power to you. You probably will like it. It's actually a multitude of reasons of why this show became the anime story at the beginning of the year. And I kind of realized that I do have a bone to pick with this because as an anime fan who has been watching anime since the days of VHS, where we didn't have streaming services, we had what was ever on TV, which was usually Pokemon, Dragon Ball Z, and Sailor Moon, and not a whole lot else. And the fact that you had to go to Suncoast. I don't know if anyone here remembers Suncoast. I'd go to Suncoast, and I would save my money, and I would buy VHS tapes of anime that were like $30, and they'd have like 2 episodes on the tapes. And I know some of you are going like, oh my gosh, how did you I don't know. I don't know how we survived under that system. We still had Blockbusters, but even Blockbusters wouldn't carry a lot of anime. Watching new anime and discovering was tough. That is why anime clubs were such a big deal growing up, because you would get together with friends and they'd bring the animes that they would buy over and you would share them and you'd watch them, and that's why clubs are so good. You don't have to do an anime club much anymore because you have streaming. But yeah, I remember all of this, so since I lived through this, I definitely have something to say because this is as concerning as people think it is, maybe even more so. Now, I've already kind of discussed in the other video the problem with Funimation deciding, hey, we're going to license an anime, we're going to release a few episodes, and then deciding at the last minute they are not going to do it. In fact, they already have like a problem because they were airing the censored version. I say airing like it's still 1990, but they were streaming the censored version. There's 2 versions of that show made. There's a censored version and an uncut version. And this was done by the Japanese, by the way. And it's already concerning enough that Funimation decided it was outside the standard, but they were showing a censored version. So really, it's been censored, and it should have ended there. There's no reason Funimation should have to remove this show at this point, and yet they did. And that started getting a bunch of conspiracies. What is the standard Funimation is talking about? After all, they have a section, as I pointed out in my other video, on Funimation Now, a fan service section. A section of the website that is dedicated just to fan service. And that is literally an invitation. Hey, you have a little bit of time on your own, no one in the house, come to this section and, have a little fun. And here they are. They've picked up one of the sauciest shows they've ever picked up, and they decide it falls out their standards. Well, what is their standards? We don't know. Like everything Funimation does that ticks off the community, we don't know. We don't know why they fired Vic Mignogna. They said they did an investigation, found allegations were credible. Don't know what those allegations were. They said this show, they were watching it, falls outside their standards. Okay, fine. What are those standards? We don't know. And situations like these do not breed a lot of consumer confidence. Because while Funimation is not legally required to share the inner workings of their company and how they work with fans, by the way, they also said, my favorite is like, well, case closed. It sold well, it didn't sell enough to continue releasing. Well, how much did it need to sell to keep releasing, and, what was that goal? We don't tell you. Again, this is a company that does not communicate with the fans, and they're not legally obligated to, but it always rubs me the wrong way. But that secretiveness is not exactly helping them, because when Funimation announced a new anime that was coming to their site, and I forgot what it was, so forgive me, it was flooded with comments like, watch it before they pull it. Is this show under your standards? It's like, well, it's going to air until they realize it falls outside of standards. What are the standards? Who made the decision? This is going a long way to breed mistrust in the anime community. And for a lot of good reasons. Because it doesn't show a stable company. It shows a company that might just one day out of the blue take your favorite show away, or maybe even edit. You never know what they're going to do. Now, one of the things that they announced fairly recently was Satoshi Kon's masterpiece anime series that I have not seen for a long time, Paranoia Agent, is going to be streaming exclusively on Funimation now. It's not going to be on DVD and Blu-ray, though. They're not releasing it just yet. And my first thought is, well, how long is that going to be on streaming services? Because one of the things that Interspecies reviewers has shown is like anime can be lost even before the license expires. Like, I encourage people who like anime, if you have a show that is a personal favorite show, like you watch the show and you are going to watch it again in the future, and heck, you might want to watch it forever, buy it on a physical media, because licenses get lost all the time, and you cannot depend on these streaming services to have it forever. And now here's Funimation licensing stuff, putting it on their site for a few episodes, and then removing it. And the question remains, what next? What else is Funimation going to comb through all their shows and decide, we are going to remove this show for whatever reason? It is not something you want to have hanging over your head when you are trying to convince your customers that streaming is the future. Our app is the one-all, be-all app of anime, and trust us, because you sign up for Funimation now, you will be getting everything you want. Unless, of course, we discover after a few episodes the show falls outside of our standards, whatever the heck those are, and decide to pull it, and heck, not even tell you about it. Because the part about the story that I missed the first time around is that Funimation didn't actually announce that this show is being pulled. They actually still have not really even announced this. It was just discovered one day that it's not there, which prompted sites like Anime News Network and My Anime List to start questioning publicly what happened to it. Someone sent Funimation an email, and you got the famous email. That was not a statement. That was a personal email to someone that showed that, hey, we removed the series out because it fell outside our standard. So the fact that Funimation wasn't even honest with fans added a whole new layer of distrust with the fans and the company. And then you go a little farther, you start to wonder why it was pulled, and you start having a bunch of theories, like maybe their parent company Sony had like an issue with this now, maybe the voice actors working on it started voicing objections. It's possible. Maybe they bought the license to keep it from other people from having it, which typically I would say no to, although I will mention they renewed the license to Case Closed over and over and over. They kept that show on lock and key, under lock and key, for like a good decade or so. And you know what? After the first 3 years or so, they didn't do anything with it. The last time they renewed the license, they streamed it, and that was it. That was it. They lost the license, it moved on, and basically they kept a lot of companies who might have been interested in that show from being able to release it. That said, I don't think that is exactly what happened. I think they were just really caught off guard by how far this title went and decided, well, someone from Funimation or maybe someone from Sony decided they were going to pull it, but that brings up some new questions. This whole release brings up new questions because Funimation used to be the company that censored. When they were doing Dragon Ball Z on TV, they were editing it, they were censoring it, and fans demanded for years that their stuff be uncut. Keep in mind, when I was an anime fan way back in the day, uncut anime was actually a big deal. There was a lot of misconception that anime was for kids, that we had to start removing elements from these shows, and even as a young kid, it's like, no, that I don't want R-rated movies edited for me so that I can watch them as a kid. I want to grow up and watch the R-rated movies. And I've always been against that. When Funimation decided they wanted to be a serious anime distributor, they said that they would not edit and they would not cut and they would not censor. And for the most part, they have done just that. However, I'm hearing reports that recently they are starting to let some edits slip into the show. They're starting to rewrite some things from the Japanese scripts that might be considered problematic for Twitterverse. And this is what happens when Twitter starts affecting your company. I think the reason Interspecies reviewers was pulled is because I think they were getting flack on Twitter from woke fans. It's kind of interesting to watch younger anime fans right now because younger anime fans of this generation is so different from the anime fans of my generation. My generation, it was very, very rare that you would see an anime fan championing an edited release. I mean, granted, in hindsight, there were some positives to having anime edited on TV. If they weren't edited, they would not have got Dragon Ball Z or Sailor Moon or Gundam Wing on TV, where they became massive hits and inspired young kids to seek out other anime. In fact, I'm watching Nadia's Secret of the Blue Water, and it dawns on me, with minor editing, this could have been released as a Fox Kids show, and it could have, inspired kids for years to watch other anime, and maybe even Nadia would be a permanent fixture. By the way, you can stream Nadia on High Dive, just throwing that out there. But that was my generation. We did not like having these shows edited, and we fought and we argued. And, we would only buy uncut releases. Like, we wouldn't buy the edited releases. We would vote with our wallet. Hey, when it comes on video, it's going to be uncut. Hence, why when a show like The Vision of Escaflowne aired on an edited version on Fox Kids, when it came to DVD, there were two versions. There was the uncut and the edited. We always bought the uncut, and I believe the edited version was even canceled. That was my generation. This generation, the woke generation, seems to have a very big problem all of a sudden with some of the content in anime. Rather than taking the stance that, hey, I don't like this, Interspecies reviewers, you know what? I think that's an offensive show. I'm not going to watch it. Rather than taking that stance and letting it be, they start complaining this show has bad morals. It is perverted. It is disgusting. I'm not denying this, by the way, folks. I'm just saying what they're saying about it. And it should not be seen. And I agree with everything except that it should not be seen. If you want to watch this little spicy show, you are free to do it, or at least you should be free to do it. So when Funimation pulls this, it creates a new problem. Because once you start putting in other people's hands the ability to control what you can and can't watch, problems arise. Now, woke Twitter will tell you, oh, we're doing it for your own good. But you know what? The editing back then was done for our own good. Now, do you want to know what was being edited? Let me give you some examples of things that I remember being edited. Okay, so cigarettes and beers were edited out of most of the anime I watched on TV. Now, even I'm going to admit, if you're airing it on kids' TV, kids don't need to see characters smoking and drinking. Those are bad habits. Don't put off encouraging that as long as you possibly can. That we can agree on, I believe. And they removed some particularly spicy jokes. Okay, for kids, that's fine. But then you start getting to the next level. How... No, let's save that one. Let's start with Dragon Ball Z. Dragon Ball Z, when it aired, they removed the blood. Okay, I guess you could make an argument for that. But then they decided, you know what? The whole idea of death is too complicated for kids. It's too disturbing. So we're going to remove death. And bad guys and good guys are going to be sent to another dimension. That is seriously what happened. There would be characters who would die on screen, beaten up, and they are being sent to another dimension. Okay, now you're starting to get into a little bit of questionable censoring, because not only are we lying about death, but in a sense we're minimizing it, and we're almost encouraging kids to go out and beat each other up, thinking there's no consequences, you're just going to go to another dimension. But let's take it a little bit further. You know how Sailor Moon today is praised, like just praised for how forward it was with LGBT representation? I'm going to say this right now. Sailor Moon is the first show I even saw a gay couple in a show, and it dawned on me, they're gay. That's two girls who are dating each other, and, so that's the first time I noticed it. Well, of course, in America, they removed that and people criticize them. But here's the thing. Back then, they were considering they were doing the greater good. Most people would argue, some people would still disagree, obviously, that they were not doing the greater good. They were actually harming social norms. But that was, the gatekeepers at that point was saying, well, we feel that we are protecting the children. And a lot of people today would disagree with that. And then let's go to, and that's the gatekeepers today. It's like, some people are saying, like, well, but that's stupid. Like, we're trying to protect people. It's like, yeah, but who gives you the right to say that? Who gives you the right to say, and keep in mind, Interspecies reviewer, this is a very different situation. This wasn't even aired on TV. This wasn't geared for kids. This is made for adults. Even the censored version is R-rated. You are telling adults what they can and cannot watch. That seems to be petty. That is way overstepping your bounds. I'm going to share one more example, and then you'll understand why I fight so much for Uncut and no censorship. I remember years ago on Kids WB, they were premiering a show at the time called Cardcaptors. Me and my friend Zach watched it. And it was a show where this Chinese boy, came somewhere in Japan and met a girl named Sakura, or Sakura, I should say. And she was like capturing cards and wasn't doing a very good job. And he was there like he was going to show her how it was done, because cards, magical powers came out and you had to capture them in cards. It was like, we didn't even get it. We didn't understand what this was. Didn't like it. I found out later on that's because this was censored. And in fact, what we saw wasn't episode 1 of the show. It was episode 8. And it wasn't even called Cardcaptors. It was called Cardcaptor Sakura. So I bought the uncut subtitle DVD, the first one that had the first 4 episodes. And what a difference. What a difference. Way, way better. Very, very cute. I'm trying to get my nieces to watch the show, which is difficult because it's subtitled and they're not quite there yet. But I do want to show this show to them one day. And I found out that it was censored because at the time the marketers decided, you know what, shows about girls don't make a lot of money. Let's make this boy the main character, and that way we can sell it as an action series for boys. The Gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are a funny thing. Because when you have a gatekeeper, it's ultimately up to them whether or not you get to see something, how you get to see it, and in what format you get to see it. And they make mistakes all the time. And this situation with interspecies reviewers and the negative reaction to it shows that the more things change, the more they say the same. Now, TV isn't really that big of a deal. Saturday morning cartoons, not a thing anymore. Most anime winds up on Toonami or Adult Swim, which is made for teenagers and adults. We have had pretty much uncut anime for years. Heck, Weathering with You has become a box office sensation. Well, not sensation, but for an anime, over $7 million off of a movie that has no brand name, and it's PG-13. It's not even being sold to kids. My, how times have changed. And yet, I'm definitely now leaning towards, like, when I was young, and parents complained about Pokemon, by the way, I used to tell people that the people who are complaining probably have never watched the show. They don't know what it's about. And granted, they don't have to like it, but a lot of their complaints did not make any sense with the show that I was watching, and that people like to complain because they like to complain. And I'm more leaning towards, like, the more woke we get, the more freedom we have, the more people just want to control and boss and bully and dictate what to do. Interspecies Reviewers is not a good show, in my opinion, but it should have never been taken off Funimation streaming service. Now, I have proposed an alternative. Maybe Funimation might want to have a separate app called Funimation Adult or Funimation Lounge, Funimation After Dark, something like that. Something to suggest that, hey, this is the adult app, and move all of their adult content over there, and then they could have, like, sell it like in a bundle if they want, or you could have two different streaming services, so that, hey, maybe the Funimation Now app should be PG-13 or less, while the Funimation Lounge app should be 18 and up. Maybe that would be a good compromise. But you start pulling shows, you start censoring shows, we're going back to a time period that I don't think we should go towards. Because just as much as you can tell an adult you shouldn't be watching that spicy show because of what it might encourage you to do in the dark, you could easily go to a show like Sailor Moon and say, hey, you know what, at 5 years old, you don't need to be hearing about LGBT, and with Dragon Ball, at 5 years old, you don't need to be watching about death. Heck, you could even go to the Studio Ghibli films, and it's like, hey, Princess Mononoke, if the wolf's head didn't get chopped off, maybe it would be a family movie. So let's do some edits and let's get it down to a PG-rated film so the whole family can watch it, because Princess Mononoke sounds like a kid's movie. I don't want to go back to that era. I will always champion people being able to watch what they want to watch. Interspecies Reviewers has definitely brought up a very interesting discussion in the anime community. Who gets to decide what you watch? You know, is anime all lasting on streaming services? And if you don't own it on physical media, well, what happens to it if the company decides they don't want to show it anymore? It opens up a lot of interesting talking points, and I actually suspect this isn't going to be the last time we discuss it. But I'm going to end this little editorial here right now. What do you think? Do you agree? Do you disagree? I would love to know. Comment below, like, favorite, share, subscribe, and as always, flame responsibly. Have a good one.